My name is Pierce. The first time I heard about it was from a drunk. That's how most of the city's ghosts introduce themselves, through the half-coherent rambling of someone everyone else stopped listening to years ago. It was just past midnight. I was sitting in my car outside the precinct, the rain cutting lines down the windshield like transparent cracks, when a man staggered up and tapped on the glass. His face was wet, not from the rain, I think, but from tears that had been falling long before the storm started. "You're the detective, right?" he asked through the narrow gap I left in the window. "Sometimes," I said. "Depends who's asking." He leaned in, breath thick with cheap gin. "You ever take the 312 train? Southbound?" I told him there hadn't been a 312 train in years. The line shut down after the flood of '92. But he kept shaking his head. "No, not that one. The one after it. You don't see it on the schedule. You just hear it." He pulled a soggy ticket stub from his pocket. It was old, the ink almost gone, but I could still make out the destination stamped in faded red. Platform 0. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Platform 0. The city's main station, Darlow Central, had 8 platforms, all numbered, all accounted for. The place was a steel labyrinth built in the 1950s and expanded over the years like a tumor. But I'd seen enough maps, enough blueprints, to know there wasn't supposed to be a 0. I looked up the name of the man from the night before, Joseph Mullen. No fixed address, history of substance abuse, picked up several times for loitering in the station. 2 months ago he filed a missing persons report, his sister, June. She disappeared after taking the night train home from work. The train she shouldn't have been able to take. The thing about Darlow Central is that it never sleeps. Even at 2 a.m., there's a low hum beneath the city, trains, generators, ventilation, a steady mechanical heartbeat. You can hear it in your teeth if you stand still long enough. That night, I went down there myself. Not as a detective. Just as someone who couldn't let go of an itch in the back of his head. The ticket machines glowed pale blue under the flickering lights. The walls sweated with condensation. I bought a single ride, just for the look of it, and descended into the belly of the station. On the lowest level, a janitor in a neon vest swept the floor with mechanical precision. His eyes barely lifted when I passed. "Hey," I said. "You ever hear of a Platform 0? He stopped sweeping. For a second, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he pointed toward the far end of the corridor, a stretch of wall covered in peeling paint and outdated advertisements. "Not real," he said, voice low. "But sometimes people walk that way, and don't come back." The corridor beyond smelled like rust and mold. The lights were dimmer here, the hum louder. I ran my hand along the wall as I walked, feeling the vibration through concrete. Halfway down, I saw it. An archway half hidden behind a false wall, the plaster cracked and uneven, as if something had pushed out from the other side. No signs. No warnings. Just darkness that looked too deep for its size. Inside, the air changed. Warmer, thicker. The smell of dust and electricity. And faintly, impossibly, the sound of a train approaching. It shouldn't have been possible. The line had ended. But I could feel the vibration under my boots, hear the rails sing. A gust of wind blew from the tunnel, carrying the faint smell of burnt oil and something else, something sweet and metallic, like blood left too long in the sun. Then, for a brief second, the darkness ahead lit up, headlights, distant but real, and a shape emerged. A train, silent except for the low hum beneath it. No logos, no passengers in the windows. Just a dull metallic surface swallowing light. It slowed to a stop before me. The doors hissed open. Inside, there was no one. Just flickering fluorescent lights and a faint layer of dust on the seats, as if it hadn't carried passengers in years. At the far end of the car, an old analog clock ticked, frozen at 3:12. I should have left then. But the air inside the train felt expectant, like the moment before a confession. I stepped in. The doors closed behind me with a metallic sigh. The train began to move. Outside, the tunnel walls slipped away, replaced by something that looked less like concrete and more like skin, pale, veined, pulsating faintly with light. The overhead speaker crackled. A voice, calm and genderless, spoke. "Next stop, Platform 0. And just for a moment I thought I heard another voice beneath it, whispering the same thing, only this one sounded like me. When the train stopped, the doors opened onto a station that shouldn't have existed. The air was still, almost heavy enough to press down on my shoulders. The platform stretched endlessly into fog. No signs, no advertisements, no litter. Just silence and faint light reflecting off black marble tiles. At the far end, something stood motionless. A ticket booth, maybe, or a person. I couldn't tell. Then, from the ceiling, came a sound, faint at first, then rising. It wasn't the hum of machinery this time. It was breathing. I took a step forward. My reflection on the polished tiles moved a split second late. Another step. The sound grew louder. Then I saw the posters along the wall, the only color in that place. They were covered in faces. Mine. Hundreds of them, blurred and distorted, each with a different expression. And beneath every face, printed in the same red ink as that old ticket stub. Found. When I was a kid, my father used to tell me that the city had layers. Like an onion, Pierce, he'd say. But one that never stops growing. Back then, I thought he meant it poetically. Now, standing on that platform, staring at 100 versions of my own face, I realized he might have meant it literally. The deeper you go, the more the city remembers. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes? Hours? The clock over the platform was frozen, its second hand trembling at the edge of a tick that never came. When I finally moved, my footsteps echoed longer than they should have. The sound didn't die, it bent, as though the air itself didn't want to let go of it. I passed one of the posters. The image of my face, younger, maybe by 10 years, smiled faintly as I went by. The eyes seemed to follow. Beneath it, a small line of text appeared that hadn't been there before. Arrival confirmed. The platform split ahead, 2 tunnels identical. No signs, no indicators. The left tunnel breathed cold air, the right one warm. I picked the colder path. Instinct. The lights here were weaker. I could barely make out the rails under the haze of fog that clung to everything like dust in slow motion. Somewhere in the dark, a rhythmic clatter echoed, footsteps, or maybe wheels. Then a voice, low and broken. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. The sound came from behind a column, human, but strange, as if every syllable was dragged across gravel. I leaned closer. "Who's there?" A figure stepped into the dim light. It was a man in a station uniform, the old kind, navy blue jacket, brass buttons, peaked cap tilted low. His name tag was unreadable, the letters worn smooth. His face looked like paper, creased and pale, edges yellowed by time. "You're not supposed to see this platform," he said. "This one's closed." "Closed?" I repeated. "Since when?" He glanced up toward the ceiling, as if trying to remember something far away. "Since always." I told him I'd arrived on a train marked Platform 0. He frowned, like he was trying to place the name in his mind but couldn't find the right drawer. "No trains come here anymore," he muttered. Haven't for. He stopped. His hand rose to his ear, fingers trembling. A faint static filled the tunnel, seeping out of nowhere, whispering through the metal beams. They're listening, he said softly. The walls. You can't talk too loud. The walls have good memory. Then he pointed at me, slowly, deliberately. You rode the 312. That means it's already heard you. I opened my mouth to ask what he meant, but he was gone. No footsteps, no retreating shadow. Just gone, as if the fog had swallowed him whole. The static grew louder. It came from the tunnel itself, not from speakers, but from the structure, the metal vibrating like a living throat. Pierce. The whisper came faintly, stretching through the hum. Stay for the next train. Every instinct screamed to leave. I turned back toward where I'd come from, but the way was different now. The posters were gone. The tiles beneath my feet were darker, wet with something I didn't want to name. Then I saw the clock again, hanging crooked on a cracked pillar. It wasn't frozen anymore. The second hand was moving backward. I ran. Not far, there was nowhere to run, but far enough that the static dimmed to a background hum. I stopped near a service door, rusted but half open. Inside, a maintenance corridor stretched into darkness. It smelled of oil, old electricity, and something like burned paper. My flashlight flickered as I entered. The walls were covered in chalk markings, numbers, arrows, symbols that looked like transit routes, but twisted wrong. At one point, I realized the map was moving, tiny segments shifting, connecting to each other, redrawing itself in real time. And written across one entire section, in rough black strokes. Do not let it arrive empty. I didn't understand the warning then. But when I turned the next corner, I saw what they meant. The corridor opened into a small platform, different from the one I'd arrived on. And there, sitting motionless on the rails, was another train, same dull metal, same number etched faintly on its front, 312. Except this one wasn't empty. Through the glass, I saw figures sitting perfectly still in every seat. Their faces were blurred, like smeared paint, but their posture was eerily identical, hands on laps, heads tilted slightly toward the floor. And when I stepped closer, I realized they were all facing the same direction, toward the last car. A faint light flickered inside. Something moved. I climbed aboard. The air was colder here, stale and dry. My breath came out in thin streams of mist. The passengers didn't move. I walked slowly between the rows of seats. Every so often, I'd hear a soft creak, not from the train, but from inside the walls. When I reached the final car, I saw it, the source of the light. A small lantern sat on the floor, its flame steady despite the lack of wind. Beside it lay a notebook, pages yellowed, spine cracked. I opened it. The first line was written in a frantic, uneven hand. Every night the 312 runs again. If no one rides it, it finds someone. The rest was a blur of dates, notes, and sketches of tunnels that didn't exist on any map. But one entry stood out, dated only 3 days ago. New passenger boarded. Male. Detective, mid-40s. Said his name was Pierce. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then the train's engine started to hum. The lights flickered overhead. The passengers lifted their heads. And in perfect unison, they began to whisper. Stay. It's almost time. The train shuddered. The doors sealed themselves shut. And outside, through the fog, the station's sign flickered into life for the first time. Platform 0. The train began to move, slow at first, like it was testing if the world would let it go again. The sound of the wheels against the rails didn't feel right. It wasn't steel on steel, but something softer, wetter. The whole car pulsed under me, as though the train were breathing. The passengers swayed with the motion, their heads tilting in unison as if connected by invisible strings. I didn't breathe until I noticed one of them blink. I stumbled to the nearest door and tried the handle. Locked. The emergency lever snapped off in my hand, dry with age. When I turned back, the same man who'd blinked was staring straight at me. His face was wrong, skin stretched too smooth, like wax poured over a skull. His mouth opened, but the words came from somewhere deeper. "You shouldn't have come back." My voice failed me. He leaned forward, neck bending too far, and I saw the shadow of my own reflection in his eyes. It wasn't matching me anymore. The PA system crackled. "Next stop, surface." The passengers all turned their heads toward the ceiling and smiled. The train picked up speed. The walls outside the windows flickered, tile, then concrete, then black glass reflecting things that weren't the car or me. Shapes crawled across it, pale and slow, as though trying to keep up. I pressed my hand to the window, and something on the other side pressed back. The light cut out for a heartbeat. When it returned, I wasn't in the same car. This one was older. Wood-paneled brass fixtures, advertisements from the 1940s, smiling faces selling products that never existed. The air was heavy with perfume and dust. And there she was. A woman in a dark coat, sitting near the far door, hands folded in her lap. Her face matched the missing persons photo from Joseph Mullen's file. "June?" I said. She looked up, eyes wide but unfocused. "You can still leave," she whispered. "If you don't look at the driver." The train lurched, and the lantern from the last car rolled into view from under a seat, still burning, still steady. When I bent to pick it up, the window beside me fogged over with words scrawled from the outside. "Do not let it arrive empty." The train slowed. The air grew warmer. Somewhere ahead, metal screamed like it was being torn open. June rose from her seat, her reflection lagging behind her movements. "It wants passengers," she said. "That's how it stays real." She reached for my hand, cold fingers trembling. "When the driver asks your name, don't answer." Before I could respond, the train shuddered to a stop. The door to the conductor's cabin opened. I wish I could say what I saw inside was human. Maybe it had been once. The shape was there, a torso, shoulders, but its skin was rail metal, its face a polished mask that reflected only the viewer. Where its mouth should have been, there was a speaker grill, vibrating gently as it spoke in perfect monotone. "Name?" I didn't answer. "Name." The lights dimmed to red. I looked at June. She was mouthing something, but no sound came out. The metal under my boots throbbed like a pulse. The thing leaned closer. Its reflection in my eyes shifted until I saw not my face, but a station map, bleeding lines connecting to nowhere. "Pierce," the voice said for me. The sound of the name tore through the car like a wave. Every window cracked outward. The passengers screamed in a single, perfect pitch, the sound collapsing into feedback. I felt it drag through my skull, like my mind was being pulled out by frequency. Then silence. The lights flickered back to white. I was standing alone on a platform again. Only this time, the sign above me read Darlow Central. Everything was exactly where it should have been. Except for one thing. On the tiled wall beside the escalator, a poster hung crooked, its edges burned. My face stared back. Beneath it, in the same red type, "Departure confirmed." I looked at my reflection in the glass of the vending machine across the hall. It blinked a moment too late. When I got back to my office, the lights wouldn't stay steady. They flickered in rhythm, 3 long pulses, 1 short pause. Again. Like a heartbeat trying to learn a language. Every sound in that room seemed alive. The hum of the fridge. The clicking of the ceiling fan. Even the way the floorboards sighed when I walked across them. It was all wrong now. The city wasn't quiet anymore. It was listening. I played the tape I'd recorded underground, the one from the maintenance corridor. The playback was wrong. There were my footsteps, my breathing, the faint hum of the rails, but underneath, barely audible, another voice whispering in perfect sync with mine. Every word I said, it repeated half a second later. Only one line didn't match. When I said, "What is this place?" the voice said, "Home." By morning, I decided to visit the station again. Not Platform Zero. Not yet. Just to make sure the world hadn't swallowed itself whole while I slept. Darlow Central looked normal. People rushing, trains coming and going, the same grime on the tiles. But when I glanced at the schedule boards, the line between 3 o'clock and 3:20 was blank. Just a small space, like something had been erased. I went to the ticket booth. The clerk, a woman with gray hair tied back tight, didn't look up when I spoke. "Ever heard of a Platform Zero?" Her fingers froze mid-type. Then she reached under the counter and handed me something wrapped in a napkin. Inside was an old punch ticket, stamped in red. 312? Before I could ask, she said quietly, "Sometimes they come back. The ones who took that train. But they're not them anymore." I started to speak, but she raised her eyes for the first time. Her pupils were completely black. "You should have let it arrive empty." That night, I woke to the sound of metal grinding beneath my window. At first, I thought it was a garbage truck. Then I heard the announcement, faint, distorted, rising from the storm drains outside. "Next stop. Platform Zero." I didn't remember opening the window. But the air that came in smelled like iron and dust. And somewhere below the street, I could feel the vibration of rails coming alive again. I followed it. Down the block. Past the closed shops and neon reflections trembling in puddles. Every few steps, the hum grew stronger. The city's sounds melted into it, traffic, wind, even my own heartbeat sinking to its rhythm. When I reached the old service entrance to Darlow Central, the padlock was already open. Inside, the tunnels waited like a throat. I wasn't alone this time. A man stood at the bottom of the stairs, Joseph Mullen. He looked worse than before, his skin pale, his eyes glassy with sleeplessness. "I found her," he said. "June! You saw her too, didn't you?" I nodded. He smiled, a terrible, broken smile. "She says the station needs someone new. Otherwise it stops running." Then he held out a ticket, fresh, uncreased, printed with my name. Pierce. 312, Platform Zero. I told him to come with me, to leave this all behind. He shook his head. "She can't ride alone." And before I could stop him, he turned and stepped into the darkness of the tunnel. There was a sound, not of impact, but of arrival. The hum deepened, and the tunnel lit faintly from below, like a furnace exhaling. I ran. The walls shuddered as I passed, whispering fragments of announcements, my name, the time, the word departure. By the time I reached the main level, I could already hear it pulling in, the 312. No one else noticed. People walked past the tracks, heads down, unaware of the gleaming silver machines sliding silently into the station's edge, door already open. Inside, the seats were empty. For now. I stood at the threshold, staring at my own reflection in the glass. It blinked first. I turned away. And that's when I saw it, on the tiled wall beside the exit. A new poster. A black and white photograph of me standing in front of this very train, eyes closed, one hand resting on the open door. Captioned in red, "Final passenger." I tore it down, but underneath was another. Same image. Only this time, I was inside the train. And behind me, through the window, something moved, tall, featureless, with a face that shone like polished metal. The driver. The lights in the station flickered. Then, just for a breath, every sound stopped. And through that impossible silence, a voice whispered from the PA. "Next departure confirmed." There's a point in every investigation where logic stops being a compass and becomes an anchor. You either cut the line, or you drown with it. I think I drowned sometime after 3:12 a.m. The next evening, I couldn't fight the pull anymore. The hum beneath the city had grown constant, not just underground but everywhere. In the buzz of neon lights, the rhythm of distant footsteps, even in my own heartbeat. Every sound was in tune with it now. The city was singing. And I was the only one who could hear the words. I went back to Darlow Central for the last time. No one stopped me. No one even looked. The world had that strange, suspended feeling of a photograph. Like everything around me had already happened, and I was just walking through the imprint of it. As I descended the maintenance stairs, the temperature dropped. Condensation gathered on the walls, and the faint red glow of the emergency lights stretched long shadows across the floor. At the bottom, I saw the train waiting. The 3:12. Its doors stood open. No announcement. No driver in sight. Just the hum. Alive. Patient. I stepped inside. The car was empty, though I could smell perfume, the same June wore when she was alive. The air shimmered slightly, as though the whole compartment was underwater. The lantern I'd carried from Platform 0 rested neatly on one of the seats. Still burning. Still steady. When I picked it up, the train doors hissed shut behind me. And that was when I heard the voice again. "Welcome back, Detective Pierce." It wasn't coming from the speakers this time. It was everywhere, in the metal, in the glass, in the rhythm of the train itself. "We missed you." The lights dimmed to red. The train began to move. I tried the emergency lever again. It didn't break this time. It melted in my hand. "You brought enough names now," the voice said. "Enough to keep the line alive." The floor rippled under my boots like liquid steel. "Sit. We'll take you home." I didn't sit. I moved toward the front of the car, the hum deepening with every step, until I reached the door to the conductor's cabin. I already knew what I'd see. But I opened it anyway. It wasn't a cabin anymore. It was a room, vast and hollow, impossible to fit inside the train. The walls pulsed with veins of glowing red light, forming maps that shifted like living things. Every line was a route. Every route led back to the same point. Platform 0. And in the center of it all, the driver waited. It stood motionless, taller than before, a human outline made of polished chrome, the surface rippling with the reflections of everyone who had ever boarded. And behind its faceplate I saw movement. 1,000 blurred mouths, whispering in sync. It stepped closer, and the speaker where its mouth should be began to vibrate. "We go where the map remembers. We arrive where no station stands. We exist because you listen." Then, quieter. "Would you like to stop listening, detective?" I raised the lantern between us. The light caught on the metal and fractured into 1,000 beams. In every reflection, I saw myself, not just one version, but all of them. Me boarding. Me leaving. Me never arriving. An infinite loop of arrivals and departures, each one feeding the next. I realized what the station was. Not a place. Not a structure. A recording. Of every sound ever lost beneath the city. Every conversation cut short, Every announcement forgotten, every footstep that never found an echo. It was all here, looping forever. And now, it wanted me in the recording too. The driver extended its hand. Its voice softened. If no one listens, we stop existing. Stay. Be the listener. The light from the lantern flickered. For a second, I thought I saw June behind the creature, standing in the dark, her face calm, eyes gentle. She mouthed the same words she had before. You can still leave. The lantern flared once, then died. And in the dark, I made a choice. I reached into my coat and found the old tape recorder. The one that had been echoing my voice. I pressed play. Static filled the air, then the echo, the whisper half a second behind my own. The feedback built, growing louder, resonating through the car. The driver convulsed. The walls flickered. The sound turned from hum to scream, collapsing the loop back onto itself. The train shook violently, its lights strobing as the metal began to crack. No listener. No arrival. No station. The voice fractured into 100 directions, dissolving into static. The train came apart. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on the surface. Dawn. The city silent again. Darlos Central was gone. Not destroyed, just missing. Where the station had been, there was now only an empty intersection and the faint outline of rails that led nowhere. I looked down at my hand. The punch ticket was still there. 3:12. Stamped over it in fresh ink, cancelled. I walked home through streets that didn't hum anymore. No trains. No echoes. No song. But as I reached my building, I noticed a poster on the wall by the stairs, torn, yellowed, edges burned. My own face again. Only this time, beneath it, the red letters read. Arrival delayed. That was 3 nights ago. And tonight, the hum is back. Faint. Steady. Patient. Somewhere beneath the city, something is waking up again. And I know, when the clock hits 3:12, the next train will be waiting.